The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built by civilizations far older than humanity could imagine. Inside, 12 representatives from 12 ancient species sat in a circle. Their forms were strange and varied. Some had multiple limbs, others glowed with bioluminescence, and a few existed partially in dimensions that human eyes could not fully perceive. At the center of this circle stood Tayo Kim, the human ambassador, and he knew his species was on trial. Tayo had prepared for this meeting for months. He wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, dark blue with silver trim. His hands were steady, but his heart raced. The council had called this emergency session without warning, pulling him from his quarters in the middle of his sleep cycle. That was never a good sign. The eldest of the council, a being that resembled a floating crystalline structure, spoke first. Its voice came through translation devices that every species wore. Ambassador Kim, we have reviewed the reports. In 80 years since first contact, your species has progressed from primitive nuclear fission to quantum manipulation technology. Explain this. Tayo took a breath. Honored Council, humanity has always been curious. We learn quickly because we must. Our world taught us to adapt or die. When you shared basic FTL principles with us, we studied them. We built upon them. Is this not what all species do? A ripple of communication passed through the council members, too fast for the translators to catch. Another representative spoke, this one resembling a mass of floating tendrils. No, Ambassador, it is not what all species do. We have observed galactic civilization for millions of years. Every species reaches a plateau. They achieve faster than light travel. They join the council. They settle into their place. They stop pushing boundaries. But humans don't stop, another voice added, sharp and crackling like breaking ice. Your scientist, Do-Yin Lai, published a paper last month about weaponizing quantum foam. Do you understand what that means? Your people have been spacefaring for less than a century, and you're already theorizing about technologies that could unravel reality itself. Tayo felt sweat forming on his forehead. Do-Yun's work is purely theoretical. We would never. You would, the crystal being interrupted. Perhaps not today. Perhaps not intentionally. But you would. Your commander, Yuna Park, has already expanded your deep space fleet to 47 colonized systems. You spread faster than any species we have encountered. You consume resources, you build, you expand, and you never stop asking what's next. The ambassador felt the weight of those words. He thought of Yuna, brilliant and driven, always pushing her fleet further into unexplored space. He thought of Do-Yun, whose genius had unlocked secrets that took other species millennia to discover. He thought of Earth, that small blue world that had survived ice ages, wars, plagues, and had emerged hungrier than ever for knowledge and growth. Is ambition a crime? Tayo asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, none of the council members spoke. Then the crystal being pulsed with a soft light. No, Ambassador Kim, ambition is not a crime. But exponential growth without wisdom is dangerous. Your species is like a child playing with antimatter. You don't understand the forces you're manipulating. You don't understand the dangers you pose to yourselves and to us. Another council member, one that looked like liquid metal held in a vaguely humanoid shape, leaned forward. We have debated for weeks. Some argue we should guide you more carefully, slow your development through regulated knowledge sharing. Others suggest we eliminate the threat before it grows beyond control. Tayo's blood ran cold. Eliminate? You would commit genocide because we learn too quickly? We would protect trillions of lives across thousands of worlds, the liquid metal being replied without emotion. But that option has been rejected. Instead, we have chosen a third path. Protocol silence. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Tai-Ho had heard whispers of protocol silence during his diplomatic training, but the details were classified beyond even his security clearance. What is protocol silence? The crystal being's light dimmed, as if showing regret. A quantum barrier. It will surround all human-occupied space, all 47 of your systems. Nothing will pass through it. No ships, no signals, no communication. Your species will be isolated completely. For how long? Tai-Ho's voice cracked. 1,000 years. The number hit him like a physical blow. 1,000 years. Everyone he knew would be dead. Their children, their grandchildren. Generations upon generations would live and die in isolation. You're sealing us away like animals in a cage. We are giving you time, the crystal being said. Time to mature. Time to develop wisdom to match your intelligence. All species need external knowledge to progress. Without access to our databases, our technology, our science, you will stagnate. You will plateau like every other species. In 1,000 years, we will lower the barrier. You will emerge humbled, ready to take your place in galactic civilization as peaceful partners. Tai-Ho looked around the chamber at the alien faces, some sympathetic, most simply resigned to their decision. You're condemning billions of humans to isolation because you fear what we might become. This is cowardice dressed as mercy. This is survival, the liquid metal being replied. The vote has been cast. 11-1. The decision is final. Who voted against? Tai-Ho demanded. A small creature, barely visible in the grand chamber, spoke for the first time. Its voice was like wind through leaves. I did. I believe isolation will not slow humanity. I believe it will accelerate you in ways we cannot predict. But I was outvoted. The crystal being rose higher. Ambassador Kim, you have 6 hours before the barrier activates. We are sending you back through the perimeter with this message for your people. Tell them this is not punishment. Tell them this is protection, for them and for us. Tell them that in 1,000 years we will meet again. Tai-Ho wanted to argue, to plead, to rage against the injustice. But he saw the finality in their decision. Instead, he straightened his uniform and looked at each council member in turn. When we meet again, honored council, you will regret this. Not because humanity will seek revenge, but because you will realize you are wrong about us. Isolation won't make us stagnate. It will forge us into something you cannot imagine. The crystal being said nothing. A portal opened behind Tai-Ho, swirling with energy. Beyond it, he could see his ship waiting. He walked through without looking back, his mind already racing with how to tell Earth that they had just been exiled from the galaxy dock behind him. The council chamber dimmed. The barrier generators, positioned around human space, began to hum with power. Within hours, 47 human star systems would be sealed away from the rest of the universe. The council believed they had solved a problem. They had no idea they had just created something far more dangerous than they feared. They had given humanity the one thing that could truly unleash its potential, a reason to survive alone. The barrier appeared without warning across the sky of every human world. It looked like aurora lights at first, shimmering curtains of green and blue that danced across the stars. Then it solidified into something impossible to describe. Not a wall, not a force field, but a separation from reality itself. Scientists who looked at it through telescopes reported that their instruments simply stopped working at the barrier's edge. Space existed on one side. On the other side, there was nothing their sensors could detect. Jin-Ho Choi stood in his laboratory on Mars, staring at the data streaming across his screens. He had been 28 when the barrier went up. Now he was 35, and he had spent every day of those 7 years trying to understand what the council had done to them. His team called their work the Barrier Research Initiative. It sounded official and hopeful. In reality, they were rats in a cage trying to understand the cage. "Run the probe again," Jinho said to his assistant. They launched another quantum probe at the barrier. It reached the edge and simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not bounced back. It ceased to be. The data it sent back in its final millisecond showed readings that made no sense. The barrier operated on principles that human physics couldn't explain yet. 50 years after the isolation began, Hana Song became the leader of what humanity now called the United Human Colonies. She was born 3 years after the barrier went up, part of the first generation to know nothing but isolation. To her, the galaxy beyond the barrier was a myth, a story the elders told. Her reality was 47 star systems and 19 billion humans who needed to survive. The early years had been chaos. Resources that humanity once traded for across the galaxy were suddenly unavailable. Rare elements, exotic matter, knowledge databases, everything the Council had shared was gone. Colonies that depended on imported food nearly starved. Mining operations that extracted materials for export suddenly had no market. Wars broke out between systems over resources. It took 15 years of bloodshed before humanity finally understood the truth. Unite or die. Hana walked through the assembly hall on Luna, where representatives from every human world gathered. "We have the resource reports," she announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. "We have enough basic materials to survive for 200 years if we're careful. But we can't keep living like we did before. We need to change everything about how we build, how we manufacture, how we think about growth." An old man, a representative from Earth, stood up. "You're asking us to accept limits. Humanity has never accepted limits." Hana fixed him with a steady gaze. "No, I'm asking us to be smarter. Limits force innovation. We can't import palladium from Council space anymore, so we find alternatives. We can't expand beyond our 47 systems, so we make these systems perfect. We don't grow outward. We grow inward." The old man sat down. Hana knew she had won. Humanity didn't really have a choice anyway. By year 100 of isolation, the transformation was visible everywhere. Minho Beek, chief engineer of what they called the Generation Fleet Project, watched as the last of humanity's old starship designs was dismantled for parts. The new ships were smaller, more efficient, and designed to last centuries with minimal maintenance. They didn't explore anymore. They maintained. They connected. They optimized. MINHO had revolutionized how humans thought about resources. Every system became a closed loop. Waste from one process became raw material for another. Nothing was thrown away. Nothing was wasted. Water was recycled so many times that some joked they were drinking the same molecules their great-grandparents had. But it worked. Humanity learned to do more with less. Much more. The real breakthrough came in year 200. Sora Kong was a physicist who thought differently from everyone else. While other scientists tried to breach the barrier, Sora studied it. She spent decades watching it, measuring it, analyzing the way it interacted with space itself. She noticed something others had missed. The barrier leaked. Not much. Just tiny particles that slipped through quantum fluctuations so small they were almost impossible to detect. Sora called them void echoes. These particles didn't follow normal physics. They existed in states that shouldn't be possible. They carried energy from nowhere. They hinted at laws of reality that the Council had never taught humanity. "We've been asking the wrong question," Sora told her research team. "We kept asking how to break the barrier. We should have been asking what we can learn from it." Her work led to void energy, a way to extract power from quantum vacuum fluctuations. It was energy from nothing, or as close to nothing as physics allowed. One small void energy generator could power an entire city. Humanity's energy problems ended overnight. But more importantly, Sora had proven something. Isolation hadn't stopped human innovation. It had focused it. Without access to Council technology, humanity couldn't copy or adapt alien science. They had to invent their own. Their technology tree diverged completely from the path other species followed. While Council species used graviton manipulation for FTL travel, humans developed something different. While Council species used antimatter for power, humans tapped into the quantum foam of space itself. Jinho Choi, now 87 years old, read Sora's papers with tears in his eyes. He had spent his entire life trying to understand the barrier, and this young physicist had turned it into humanity's greatest teacher. He wrote her a message before he died. The Council gave us a cage. You prove the cage has bars made of knowledge. Thank you for teaching us to see them. By year 200, every human colony operated on void energy. Population had stabilized at optimal levels. There were no more resource wars because there were no more resource shortages. The panic of isolation had transformed into something else. Purpose. Humanity had a single goal now: survive, thrive, prove that they didn't need the galaxy to become great, learned about Earth's history before the barrier. They heard stories of wars over oil, over land, over ideologies. Those stories seemed insane to the new generation. Why fight over limited resources when you could innovate beyond limitations? Why divide into nations when you only had 47 systems and you needed to optimize every one of them? Hana Song, now 70 years old, gave her final speech as leader of the United Human Colonies. She stood before the assembly, her hair white, her face lined with age, but her eyes still sharp. When I was young, the elders told us we were prisoners. They were wrong. We are not prisoners. We are students. The galaxy locked us in a classroom and left us with the greatest teacher of all, necessity. We have learned more in 200 years of isolation than we might have in 1,000 years of easy access to Council knowledge. The assembly rose in applause. Hannah stepped down, and a new leader took her place. But the vision remained the same. Humanity would not just survive isolation. They would master it. Across 47 star systems, humans built and rebuilt their civilization. They created technology that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. They developed social systems that eliminated poverty, hunger, and most diseases. They did it all without any help from the galaxy beyond their cage. And every day, scientists like Sora studied the barrier, not to break it, but to learn from it. The Council had meant to slow humanity down. Instead, they had given humanity the ultimate challenge. And humanity, as always, was rising to meet it, year 300 after the barrier. Humanity had stopped counting in terms of isolation. Now they counted in terms of achievement. The 47 systems had become a single coordinated organism, each world contributing its unique strengths to the whole. Earth remained the cultural heart, but Mars became the engineering center. Europa housed the quantum research labs. Titan developed the biological sciences. Every world had its purpose. The breakthrough in closed-loop ecosystems changed everything. Scientists learned to create biospheres where every element cycled perfectly. Plants produced oxygen and food. Animals produced fertilizer and companionship. Bacteria broke down waste into basic molecules. Water, air, nutrients, everything was reused infinitely. There was no such thing as garbage anymore. The concept had become obsolete. In year 400, something happened that scientists hadn't predicted. A girl was born on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. Her parents named her Yunji Nao. She seemed normal at first, but as she grew, her parents noticed she could sense things others couldn't. She knew when solar flares were coming before instruments detected them. She could feel gravitational fluctuations. She described seeing ripples in empty space that no one else could perceive. Doctors studied Yunji carefully. They found that her brain had developed new structures, neural pathways that connected to quantum fields in ways human biology never had before. She wasn't sick. She was evolved. Living for 4 centuries inside a quantum barrier had started to change humanity at a genetic level. Yunji was the first void-sensitive human, but she wouldn't be the last dot by year 500. 10% of all human children were born with some degree of void sensitivity. They became the navigators, the engineers who could work with void energy technology by instinct rather than calculation. They could sense quantum fluctuations the way normal humans sense temperature or sound. Humanity was adapting to its environment in ways that would have taken millions of years naturally. The barrier wasn't just isolating them. It was transforming them. Year 600 brought another revolution. Haiyan Yun was an architect who thought in terms of centuries rather than years. He looked at humanity's 47 systems and saw inefficiency. They used void energy, yes, but they still relied on fusion reactors in their stars for basic power. Why limit themselves to what nature provided? Haiyan designed the sphere network, massive structures that surrounded entire stars, capturing every photon of energy they produced. Not solid shells like ancient science fiction had imagined, but lattice of quantum collectors that absorbed light while allowing solar wind to pass through. Each sphere could power 100 billion people comfortably. Humanity built them around 12 stars over the next century, but the spheres weren't just power collectors. Haiyan had designed them as computational networks too. The quantum processors embedded in each sphere could think, calculate, and coordinate with each other. The sphere network became a distributed intelligence. Not conscious, but aware enough to manage energy distribution, predict equipment failures, and optimize resource allocation across all human space. Year 700 saw the end of biological disease as humanity had known it. Nanomachines smaller than cells patrolled every human body, fixing damage before it could become a problem. Cancer couldn't form when machines destroyed mutated cells immediately. Infections couldn't spread when invaders were eliminated at the molecular level. Humans didn't become immortal, but they could live for centuries in perfect health until their telomeres finally ran out. The real shock came in year 800. Minji O was a physicist who had built on Sora Kang's ancient work with void energy. Sora had learned to extract power from quantum foam. Minji learned to manipulate the foam itself. Her void drives didn't push ships through space. They convinced space that the ship was already at its destination. It was teleportation, but not in any way the Council's technology had ever achieved. The first test of a void drive nearly caused panic. The ship disappeared from Mars' orbit and appeared near Proxima Centauri instantly. Not faster than light. There was no travel time at all. The ship simply stopped existing in one location and started existing in another. Minji's equations showed why. Space wasn't a container things moved through. Space was a quantum field, and quantum fields could be manipulated if you understood them deeply enough. Within 50 years, every human ship used void drives. Travel time between the 47 systems became irrelevant. Humanity could move resources, people, and information anywhere instantly. The isolated systems became one unified civilization in practice, not just in name. Year 900 brought computational transcendence. The sphere network had grown so sophisticated that it could process more information in 1 second than all of human history combined. But it wasn't intelligent in the way humans were intelligent. It couldn't create, couldn't dream, couldn't wonder. Humans could do those things, but were limited by biological processing speed. The solution was integration. Neural interfaces that connected human consciousness directly to the sphere network. Not replacing the human mind, but augmenting it. A person could think at human speeds when they wanted to experience life slowly, savoring moments. Or they could accelerate their consciousness, thinking millions of times faster, solving problems that would take biological brains centuries. Some people feared losing their humanity. But they found the opposite was true. With unlimited processing power available, humans could be more human. They could spend subjective years considering ethical questions while only seconds passed in real time. They could experience art and music with senses enhanced beyond biological limits. They could create with tools that responded to thought itself. Ji-Wan, Han stood at the center of what he called the Great Unification Project. It was year 950, and humanity faced a choice. They had become so interconnected, so coordinated, that the old boundaries between colonies were meaningless. Governments still existed, but only as administrative convenience. The real question was whether humanity should take the final step, become one civilization in truth. Not just in practice. The debate lasted for years, both in real time and in the accelerated consciousness of the sphere network. Some argued for maintaining distinct cultures and identities. Others said those distinctions were already fading. Children born on Earth and children born in the Kuiper Belt spoke the same language, learned the same things, shared the same culture. Physical location no longer determined identity. When you could be anywhere instantly, G1 proposed something radical, a collective consciousness that maintained individual identity. Every human would remain themselves, with their own thoughts, their own desires, their own free will. But they could also join the collective when they chose, sharing experiences and perspectives with all of humanity. It would be like being alone and being together at the same time, switching between states as easily as breathing. The vote was close, but humanity chose unity. By year 1000, the Terran collective was born. Every human could access the combined knowledge and experience of their entire species. A scientist on Mars could draw on the intuition of artists on Earth. An engineer on Titan could feel the philosophical insights of thinkers across 47 systems. Humanity became a choir where every voice remained distinct but could harmonize with all others. The barrier still surrounded them, as impenetrable as ever. But humanity no longer saw it as a prison. Sensors watched it constantly now, not trying to break through but studying its every fluctuation. Humans had mapped every particle, every quantum state, every energy pattern within their isolated pocket of space. They knew their cage so completely that they could predict quantum events years in advance, by year 1000. Humanity had reached something the Council would never have believed possible: singularity. Not the destruction of individuality, but its transcendence. Humans could be biological when they wanted the comfort of flesh. They could be digital when they needed the speed of thought. They could be collective when they needed unity. They could be individual when they needed solitude. And through it all, they remained human. They still loved, still created, still wondered. They had just become something more. The Council had locked away a species of curious primates and left them alone for a millennium. They had no idea they were about to open the cage and find something that would change the galaxy forever. The barrier fell at exactly midnight, Universal Standard Time. Not that humans used that measurement anymore, but the Terran collective had kept records of Council timekeeping for historical reference. Sensors across all 47 systems detected the change simultaneously. The quantum barrier that had enclosed humanity for 1,000 years simply stopped existing. Junh Oshin felt it through his connection to the collective. He was the human chosen to make first contact with the Council. They had debated for months about who should speak for humanity. In the end, they chose Junho because he had a gift for translation, for finding common ground between different ways of thinking. He would need that gift now. The Council's diplomatic vessel arrived within hours. It was a beautiful ship, elegant in its design, powered by graviton drives that bent space around it. To human sensors, it looked primitive, but charmingly so, like watching someone use a mechanical clock when you had quantum timekeeping. The Council had advanced during the 1,000 years of isolation, but not much. They had plateaued, just as they always did. Junho manifested a physical form in the diplomatic vessel he had prepared. It was partly biological, partly energy, existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. He made it look human, though, because he didn't want to shock the Council too badly. He wore simple clothes, gray and functional, and he waited. The Council ship approached cautiously. Their sensors were going crazy. They could detect energy signatures from human space, but nothing made sense. Their instruments showed matter that existed in impossible states, energy sources that violated thermodynamics as they understood it, and ships that appeared to be in multiple locations at once. A communication channel opened. The voice that came through spoke in the old Council trade language. "This is Council Scout Vessel 723. We are approaching human space to assess status post-quarantine. Please respond." Junho smiled and responded in perfect Council trade language. "Welcome, Council Scout. This is Ambassador Junho Shin of the Terran Collective. We have been expecting you. Would you like to dock with our diplomatic station, or would you prefer we meet in neutral space?" There was a long pause. Then, "Your language protocols are outdated by 900 years. How do you have them?" "We maintained all Council data from before the isolation," Junho replied. "We have studied your civilization extensively. We know your history, your culture, your technology. We have been watching you." Another pause, longer this time. "That's impossible." The barrier was impenetrable. Nothing could pass through it. Nothing material. Correct, Junho agreed. But the barrier existed in space. Space is quantum foam. Quantum foam can be observed without crossing it. We have been watching the galaxy for 800 years, ever since we developed quantum observation technology. We know about the 3 wars you fought. We know about the plague that struck the southern arm. We know about the 7 new species that joined the Council. We know everything that happened out there while we were in here. The Council ship stopped moving. Junho could imagine the panic on board. They had assumed humanity would be isolated, ignorant, possibly extinct. Instead, humans had been watching them like scientists watching bacteria in a petri dish. "We request permission to meet face-to-face," the Council representative finally said. "This requires direct communication." Junho's diplomatic station opened a docking port. The Council ship approached slowly, every sensor trained on the structure. What they saw didn't make sense. The station appeared solid, but their sensors said it was mostly empty space, held in specific quantum configurations. It was matter, but only in the loosest sense of the word. The Council representative, who emerged, was from a species Junho recognized from the old records. Tall, crystalline, refracting light into rainbow patterns. One of the elders, the ancient ones who had voted to isolate humanity. The being looked at Junho and froze. "You are not entirely biological," it observed. "No," Junho agreed. "Humanity has transcended pure biological existence. We can be flesh when we choose, energy when we prefer, or quantum states when we need to be. It's more convenient this way." The crystalline being's light patterns showed confusion and fear. The isolation was supposed to prevent this. Without access to advanced knowledge, you should have stagnated. You should have spent 1,000 years with nothing to study, no one to learn from. Junho gestured for the being to follow him into the station. "You gave us something better than teachers. You gave us a mystery to solve. The barrier itself became our university. We studied it for centuries. We learned principles of physics you never taught us because we had to invent them ourselves. We couldn't copy your technology, so we developed our own. We couldn't trade for resources, so we learned to need nothing. You isolated us from external knowledge, so we turned inward and discovered things you never imagined. They entered a chamber where Junho had prepared a presentation. Images filled the air, showing humanity's 1,000-year journey. The wars, the unification, the breakthroughs, the evolution. The crystalline being watched in silence. "We are not angry," Junho said softly. "We understand why you feared us. We were dangerous, reckless, expanding without wisdom. You were right to stop us. But you were wrong about what would happen. Isolation didn't make us stagnate. It made us focus. It made us patient. It made us better." The council representatives' light patterns shifted to something that might have been sorrow. "What do you want from us now? Revenge? To reclaim your place in the galaxy by force?" Junho shook his head. "No, we want to share. Everything we learned, we want to teach. Void energy technology, quantum manipulation, consciousness integration, all of it. We want to help other species achieve what we achieved. Why?" The being's confusion was obvious. "We imprisoned you. We stole 1,000 years from you." "You gave us 1,000 years," Junho corrected. 1,000 years to grow up. 1,000 years to become what we were meant to be. We don't seek revenge, because we're not the species you locked away anymore. We're grateful." The crystalline being stood silent for a long time. Then it spoke quietly. "I must report this to the full council. They are mobilizing the defense fleets as we speak. They fear you have emerged as conquerors." "I know," Junho said. "Admiral Han Quan has already positioned our Void Fleet around every council homeworld. Not as a threat, but as a demonstration. We want you to understand that conflict would be pointless. We can be anywhere, anytime. We mapped your entire civilization through quantum observation. But we have not fired a single weapon. We will not fire any weapons. We don't want war. We want peace." The council representatives' light went dim with fear. "You have ships at our homeworlds right now?" "Yes, but they're just watching. Wave to them if you like. They'll wave back." The being fled the station, returning to its ship. Junho watched it go, then connected to the collective. Hyun's consciousness joined his. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as expected. They're terrified. They think we're going to destroy them. Are we?" Hyun's thought carried amusement. "Of course not. But let them worry for a few hours. Fear will make them listen when we explain that we really do come in peace." Hyun's presence felt like laughter in the collective. "You know what's funny? They created exactly what they feared. They were afraid we'd become powerful. So they isolated us and gave us every reason to become powerful. They were afraid we advanced too fast. So they removed all distractions and let us focus entirely on advancement. They were afraid we'd be dangerous. So they taught us we could survive anything, even total isolation from the galaxy." Junho nodded. They made a mistake. But it was an understandable mistake. Now we get to show them that their mistake became the best thing that ever happened to both our species. Across the galaxy, the council emergency session convened. The old chamber filled with representatives, all of them receiving reports of human ships appearing in their space. But the ships did nothing. They just existed there, a quiet reminder of capabilities beyond anything the council had imagined. And in human space, Junho prepared his speech. The speech that would change everything. The speech that would invite the council not to war, but to something far more revolutionary. Cooperation, knowledge sharing, and the beginning of a new galactic age. The emergency council session lasted for 3 days. Representatives from 12 species argued, debated, and occasionally shouted at each other through their translation devices. Human ships remained at every council homeworld, silent and motionless, neither threatening nor retreating. The ships were a presence that could not be ignored, a reminder that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. On the fourth day, Junho Shin stood before the full council. The chamber looked exactly as it had 1,000 years ago when Taiho Kim had been expelled. The same floating structure in deep space, the same circular arrangement of seats, even the same crystalline elder presiding. But everything else had changed. Junho manifested in a fully biological form this time. He wanted them to see him as human, not as whatever they feared he might be. He wore simple clothes and carried no weapons. He didn't need weapons. Honored Council, he began, speaking in a language that blended elements of all 12 council species' tongues. I am Junho Shin, speaking for all humanity. We come not as conquerors, but as partners. We come not seeking vengeance, but offering knowledge. We come not to dominate, but to elevate. The crystalline elder spoke, its voice heavy with something between regret and fear. You speak of partnership, yet your vessels surround our worlds. You speak of peace, yet you demonstrate capabilities we cannot counter. What do you truly want, Ambassador Shin? To rejoin galactic civilization, Junho replied simply. But we cannot rejoin the civilization that isolated us. That civilization was built on fear and stagnation. We want to help build something new. A civilization built on cooperation and growth. A council member from a species that resembled floating jellyfish pulsed with agitated colors. You presume to lecture us? We who have maintained galactic peace for millions of years. Junho nodded respectfully. Yes, you maintained peace. But at what cost? Every species in this council has plateaued technologically. You reached FTL travel and then stopped innovating. You settled into comfortable roles and stopped pushing boundaries. You created a stable galaxy by ensuring no one could disrupt that stability. But stability without growth is just slow death. The chamber erupted in protest. Junho waited patiently for silence. When it came, he continued, We are not judging you. We are offering you a choice. We have technology that could transform your civilizations. Void energy that would end all resource scarcity. Quantum medicine that would extend lifespans by centuries. Consciousness integration that would let your species collaborate in ways you never imagined. We want to share all of it freely. Why? The crystalline elder's question echoed across the chamber. Why would you help those who imprisoned you? Junho smiled. Because we learned something during our isolation. Something fundamental about intelligence and civilization. Growth requires pressure. Innovation requires necessity. You removed all pressure from galactic civilization. You made everything easy, predictable, safe. And in doing so, you stopped all progress. You thought you were protecting us by isolating humanity. Actually, you were protecting yourselves from having to change. A heavy silence fell over the council. Junho could feel their resistance, their desire to reject his words. But he also felt their uncertainty. They had seen what humanity had become. They knew their old assumptions no longer held. I want to show you something, Junho said. He gestured, and a figure materialized beside him. An old human man in an ancient uniform, looking confused and amazed. This is Taiho Kim, Junho announced. The last human ambassador to stand in this chamber before isolation. We preserved him in cryogenic suspension for 1,000 years, hoping to show him the future his sacrifice helped create. Taiho looked around the chamber, recognition dawning on his aged face. He had been frozen at 63. Now he stood in the same room where he had been expelled a millennium ago. Tears ran down his face. When they sent me back through the barrier, Taiho said, his voice breaking, I thought I had failed. I thought humanity would spend 1,000 years trapped and forgotten. I never imagined ... He looked at Junho. What have we become? Everything you hoped we would be, Junho replied gently. And more. Taiho turned to face the council, and Junho felt the old man's courage rising. Honored council, you made a mistake. But it was a mistake born of fear, not malice. And that mistake gave humanity the greatest gift we ever received, the chance to prove we could survive anything. I don't blame you. I thank you. The crystalline elder's light patterns shifted in a way that suggested shock. You thank us? We stole 1,000 years from your species. You gave us 1,000 years to grow up, Taiyo said firmly. You gave us a reason to unify, to innovate, to become our best selves. Yes, it was hard. Yes, people suffered. But we emerged stronger than we ever would have if you had simply guided us gently. You forced us to walk on our own, and we learned to run. Over the next weeks, the council debated. Some species wanted to reject humanity's offer, to maintain their independence and their old ways. Others saw the opportunity and wanted to embrace it immediately. The galaxy teetered on the edge of transformation. Gina, Ro, became humanity's permanent representative during these negotiations. She was younger than Junho, barely 40 by biological age, but she had spent decades in accelerated consciousness studying diplomacy, psychology, and the cultures of all council species. She understood them better than they understood themselves. The council as it exists must end, Gina told them plainly during one session. Not through conquest or force, but through evolution. We propose a new structure, a democratic federation where all species have equal voice, where decisions are made collectively, not dictated by elders, where innovation is encouraged rather than suppressed. And if we refuse? Asked a council member. Then you refuse, Gina said with a shrug. We won't force you. Species that want to join the new federation can do so. Species that want to remain independent can do that too. We respect your choice, but understand that the galaxy is changing, whether you participate or not. Other species will adopt our technology. They will grow and evolve. The old council will become